Every city has its secrets, but Vegas is a crime scene hiding in plain sight. And the victim? The very soul of the place. You see, the thing about a crime scene is the silence that comes after. The chaos is over, and what's left is this heavy, unnatural quiet. And that's the first piece of evidence you notice here. You walk into one of these carpeted cathedrals on a Tuesday night, a place built to hold the noise of 10,000 hopes and bad decisions, and you can hear the air conditioning kick on. You can hear the ice shift in your own glass. That's Exhibit A, the silence. The lights are still there, of course. They do their job. They pulse and they glitter and they scream, anything is possible. From a distance, from the airplane window on descent, it still looks like a box of jewels spilled across the desert floor. It still promises the same old, beautiful lie. But when you get on the ground, when you walk through the sliding glass doors and take that first breath of chilled, recycled air, you realize you've walked into a museum. A museum of what Vegas used to be. I was talking to a guy named Sal, a blackjack dealer at one of the big properties on the Strip. He's been standing behind that green felt for 35 years. He has that look. You know the one. He's seen it all. He told me, it used to be a rhythm, a beat. He said, even on a slow night, the room had a pulse. It was the sound of 100 little dramas playing out at once. The clack of chips, the groan, the sudden yelp of a guy who just hit 21. He leans in a little closer, lowers his voice. Now, he says, now the loudest sound is the shuffle machine. It's just mechanical. There's no life in it. We're not hosting a party anymore. We're supervising a transaction, and you see it everywhere. You see the cocktail waitress with a perfect smile and an empty tray, making her rounds through rows of empty slot machines, each one singing its lonely electronic song to no one. You see the young couple, kids maybe in their late 20s, holding hands, wandering aimlessly. They look up at the signs for the restaurants, the celebrity chefs, the steakhouses, the $28 hamburger joints, and you can see the math happening behind their eyes. You see the moment the dream of a big Vegas night collides with the reality of their bank account. The shoulders slump just a little, the hand-holding gets a little tighter, a little more for comfort than for fun, and then they turn and walk away. Probably headed for a food court or a convenience store off the Strip. This isn't a party that's winding down. A dying party still has a few drunk people dancing in the corner. No, this is the morning after. The lights are on, you can see all the stains on the carpet, and someone has to figure out who's going to pay for it all. That brings us to the witness testimony. Because the people who come here, the pilgrims who make the journey to this neon mecca, they're the ones who feel the shakedown most acutely. They're the ones giving statements. They'll tell you about the feeling of being legally pickpocketed. Think about it. The old promise of Vegas was simple. We'll take your money at the tables, sure. It's a gamble. But in exchange, we'll make you feel like a king for a few days. The room will be cheap, the drinks will be free, the parking will be a goddamn constitutional right. It was a fair trade, a hustle maybe, but an honest one. That deal is off the table. Now, the hustle starts the second you book the flight. You find a room that's advertised at $150 a night, a pretty good deal, you think. But by the time you check out, the bill has been padded with a $45 a night resort fee. A fee for what? For the privilege of using a pool you never saw? For the Wi-Fi that's slower than your phone's data plan? No one can ever really tell you. It's just the fee. Then you land. You rent a car, you drive to the hotel that you're already paying an extra $45 for, and you're greeted by a gate. Parking, $20 a day. To leave your car in a concrete structure so you can go inside and give the casino more of your money. It used to be the most obvious loss leader in the world. Of course, the parking is free, you idiot. We want you inside. But the logic has changed. The house doesn't just want to win at the table anymore. It wants to win in the parking garage, too. And it keeps going. You sit down at a video poker machine at the bar, the last bastion of the free drink. You put a $100 bill in, and you wait. And you wait. And the bartender avoids eye contact until a little green light on the machine blinks on, signaling to him that you have now gambled enough to be worthy of a complimentary $9 bottle of water. It's not about the money, not really. It's about the feeling. It's the difference between being a guest and being a mark. It's the slow, creeping realization that every single interaction is designed to extract the maximum amount of cash from your wallet before you leave. It's not a game anymore. It's an algorithm. So the evidence is clear. The crime scene is cold, sterile, and eerily quiet. The witnesses all tell the same story. They came for a good time, and they left feeling like they'd been taken for a ride. The what is obvious. A city's promise has been broken, which leads to the only question that matters. Who's responsible? So you've got a crime scene. You've got witness statements. The next step in any investigation is to round up the usual suspects. You put them in a lineup, under the harsh light, and you ask the hard questions. And in the case of the slow, quiet death of the real Las Vegas, the lineup is interesting. The first one you bring in, suspect number 1, he doesn't look like a killer. He's not a mobster with a pinky ring or a gunslinger with a quick temper. He wears a well-tailored but forgettable suit. He carries a leather briefcase. He's got a calm, almost boring demeanor. Let's call him the accountant. The accountant isn't a person, you see. He's an idea. He's the ghost in the machine of the modern, publicly traded, corporate-owned Las Vegas. His motive isn't malice. It's simpler, colder, and a whole lot more dangerous. It's shareholder value. I talked to a guy, we'll call him Michael, who used to be a mid-level executive in marketing for one of the giant hospitality groups that now owns half the Strip. He left the industry a few years ago. He said he couldn't stomach it anymore. He's the one who explained the accountant's logic to me. He said, "You have to understand, the game changed when Wall Street took over. The old guys, even the mob guys, they were casino operators. Their entire business model was built on one thing: get people to the tables, get them playing. Everything else, the cheap rooms, the buffet, the free parking, that was all bait. The only number that mattered was the handle, the total amount of money being bet. The Anister clearing and Nine og vary. But the accountant, Michael told me, he doesn't care about the handle. He cares about something called RevPAR, revenue per available room. He looks at a hotel not as a casino, but as a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, every single square foot of the property has to justify its existence financially. The free parking lot? That's a column of zeros. The comped drink? That's a negative number. The working class family who comes for the weekend, eats at the food court, and gambles $100? Their profit margin is tiny. The accountant's weapon is data. He has a decade's worth of analytics that tell him a simple, brutal truth. It is more profitable to have one high roller spend $10,000 than it is to have 50 families spend $200 each. The high roller doesn't complain about a $50 resort fee. He doesn't blink at a $30 cocktail. He pays for the $1,000 a night suite. The math is undeniable. So the order comes down from on high. Stop chasing the minnows and go after the whales. Squeeze every last drop of revenue from every person who walks through the door. The parking garage becomes a profit center. The bars become profit centers. The pools become profit centers. The humanity, the welcome, the soul of the place, that doesn't fit on the spreadsheet. So it gets deleted. It's a cold, efficient, and devastatingly effective strategy. The accountant isn't trying to kill Vegas. He's trying to make it as profitable as possible. The fact that the city's soul is a casualty in the process, well, that's just the cost of doing business. A rounding error. He's a compelling suspect. For him, it's not personal. It's just numbers. But then you look down the lineup, and there's another figure. This one is harder to see. It's hazy, indistinct. It's not a person at all. It's a shadow. Let's call it suspect number 2, the ghost of competition. And this is where the story gets complicated. Because the defenders of the New Vegas, the guys like the accountant, they'll tell you they didn't have a choice. They'll tell you that the old Vegas was already dying, and they were just trying to save the patient. And you know what? They're not entirely wrong. For 50 years, Las Vegas had a monopoly on legal casino gambling in America. It was the only game in town, literally. If you wanted to play blackjack legally, you had to get on a plane and fly to the middle of the Mojave Desert. That was a powerful, powerful position to be in. But it's gone. First came the tribal casinos. Little by little, state by state, they started popping up. Suddenly, you didn't have to fly to Nevada. You could just drive an hour outside of Phoenix, or San Diego, or Seattle. Then came the riverboats. Then states started legalizing it outright. And the final nail in the coffin of the monopoly? The smartphone. The little device in your pocket. You can bet on a football game from your couch. You can play a slot machine while you're waiting in line for a coffee. The world changed. Vegas was no longer the only place to gamble. It was just a place to gamble. And in many cases, It was the most inconvenient and expensive one. So the city had a choice to make. An existential one. How do you compete when you've lost your main advantage? You can't be the only game in town anymore. So what do you become? They decided to go all in on spectacle. They couldn't be the most convenient, so they'd be the biggest, the most luxurious, the most exclusive. They wouldn't sell gambling anymore. They'd sell an unforgettable luxury experience. They built billion-dollar mega resorts. They attracted the world's best chefs, the biggest pop stars, the most expensive bottle service nightclubs. They aimed for the global elite, the kind of people who wouldn't think twice about dropping 10 grand on a weekend. It was a pivot, a survival strategy. In this light, the resort fees, and the paid parking and the expensive drinks aren't just corporate greed. They're a defense mechanism. They're the city trying to redefine itself, trying to find a reason to exist in a world that doesn't really need it anymore. So who's the real killer? The cold-blooded accountant who sees people as numbers on a spreadsheet? Or the desperate ghost of competition that forced the city to sacrifice its own identity just to stay alive? Is this a story of greed or a story of survival? So there's your lineup. On one side, you have the accountant, the cold, logical embodiment of corporate efficiency, armed with a spreadsheet and a mandate to maximize profit at all costs. On the other, you have the ghost of competition, the shadowy pressure of a world that changed, forcing Vegas to either evolve or die. You look from one to the other. Greed or desperation? Malice or self-preservation? You're looking for a killer, and that's when you realize the truth. The kind of truth that wraps up every good mystery. It wasn't a murder. It was a conspiracy. The ghost of competition kicked the door down. It created the panic, the existential crisis. It gave Vegas the motive. But the accountant provided the weapon. The accountant signed the order. The accountant looked at all the possible paths to survival and chose the one that was the most profitable and the least human. And that's the final verdict in this case. The death of the old Vegas, the accessible Vegas, the Vegas that belonged to everyone, was a calculated suicide. The city had a choice. When the world changed, it could have doubled down on what made it unique. It could have fought to remain the most affordable, the most generous, the most outrageously fun escape for the average American. It could have been the last holdout of the 99-cent shrimp cocktail and the free parking space. But it chose not to. It looked at the working man, the secretary, the plumber from Ohio who saved up for one big trip a year, and it decided they weren't the right kind of customer anymore. In its chase for the high-end client, Vegas systematically, deliberately, strangled the very foundation it was built on. You feel it most when you talk to the people who don't just visit, but who actually live here. I was at a small bar, a few miles off the Strip, the kind of place with a good jukebox and cheap beer. I got to talking with the woman behind the bar, Maria. She's lived in Vegas her whole life. Her mom was a housekeeper at the Stardust. She works 2 jobs now to make ends meet. She told me, "The tourists are different now. They seem stressed. They come in for 2 nights instead of 4. They buy their booze at CVS to drink in the room because they can't afford the bar prices. And you can't blame them." She wipes down the bar with a rag. But that means they're not spending money on shows. They're not tipping the dealers or the valets or me as much. Everything on the Strip got more expensive, so everyone has less to spend on the actual fun. The corporations get their money from the resort fees, but the rest of us, we're fighting over scraps. That's the part that doesn't show up on the spreadsheet. The house always wins, sure, we all know that, but it used to be a win-win. You'd lose a little money, the house would make a little money, and people like Maria could make a living. Now, the house is winning bigger than ever, and it's winning at everyone else's expense. It's not just cashing out the tourists. It's cashing out its own community. And here's the final turn of the screw. This case, it isn't just about Vegas. You can change the names, change the location, but the story is the same everywhere you look. This is the story of the premiumization of America. Think about the last time you booked a flight. There's basic economy, where they charge you for a carry-on bag and the privilege of choosing a seat. And then there's first class. The middle, the comfortable, affordable standard that used to be the default, it's vanishing. Think about concert tickets. You try to buy a seat and get hit with dynamic pricing that jacks up the cost based on demand. The entire experience of public life, of American entertainment, is being divided. There's the VIP room, and there's general admission. And the space in between is getting smaller and smaller. Vegas didn't invent this model. It just perfected it. It created the most glittering, hypnotic, and heartbreaking monument to this new American reality. It's a city that promises a dream for the masses, but is increasingly only affordable for the few. It's a ghost town with neon lights, haunted by the memory of the very people it decided to leave behind. The investigation is over. We know what happened. We know who did it, and we know why. The only thing left to do is to survey the damage and ask what comes next. So in the end, this was never really a mystery about who killed a city. It was an autopsy of an idea, the very American idea that there could be a place for everyone. A fantasy land that was a little loud, a little tacky, but fundamentally democratic in its spirit, where a school teacher and a CEO could sit at the same blackjack table and, for a few hours at least, the odds were exactly the same. That version of Las Vegas made a bet. It wagered that the shine of the VIP room and the approval of Wall Street were worth more than the loyalty of the crowd. It systematically traded its raucous, beating heart for a predictable, manageable, and much more profitable machine. Looking around at the empty spaces and the worried faces of the people who rely on this city for their livelihood, you have to wonder if it's starting to realize it may have lost that bet. The real gamble here isn't happening at the poker tables anymore. It's the one the city is making on its own future. The question is no longer whether the house will win, but whether it's building a house anyone wants to visit. Can a place built on the promise of constant reinvention find its soul again? That's the mystery that remains unsolved. If this story meant something to you, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's your Vegas story? Subscribing lets us keep digging into the stories that matter. Thanks for listening.